Okay, this is going to be hopefully a fairly in-depth explanation of what I think the text actually demands us to see or to understand about it, to be coherent. So hopefully this is going to be the most comprehensive or in-depth look at this, but I'm still refining how to try to explain this position. I do understand it enough at this point to feel like it is the only faithful way to understand what it's saying. And I think some of the reasons we should take it this way is because it continues from the previous chapters in Daniel to go along the same sort of historical flow that's set forth in the preceding chapters. We have God showing history in advance over sweeping periods of time, one empire after the other. And many other interpretations do not take into account the original Hebrew here, because this is going to be very important. If you read it in the King James Bible, you will not see what the original text says because of a translational issue. And it's not tricky. It's just blatantly the case that two different words are translated to the same English word. And this fact obscures, no question about it. There's nothing tricky about it. There's two different words used, and they engage with each other in the text in such a way that the fact in the English you only see the word vision obscures how these two different words are interacting with each other. And you'll see that clearly. And because of that fact, I'm going to make the case that when you see these two different words and how they interact with each other in the original text, you'll see something that cannot be seen in the English. Also, I will try to give some other arguments to why certain other interpretations fall short or fail. And that's the reason there's so many different weird views, which are actually, the ironic thing is that although my view is accused of being imposed on the text, the reality is the reason there's so much disagreement on how to interpret it is because none of the other views work. And they're imposing their theological system onto it. This is just taking the text for what it is. And the reason I think it's, besides that it's valid, would be that it actually focuses on what you would expect it to focus on, if indeed Jesus Christ is the purpose of God's plan in his divine revelation, because it puts the focus on the plan of salvation as delivered in the gospel by Christ, rather than thinking all prophecy regarding Daniel and Revelation has to do with the time leading up to Christ and then nothing. And then at the end, when there's a Jewish temple rebuilt, almost as if God was leaving the whole Bible blank regarding the period of the new covenant people of God that was the pinnacle of God's plan of salvation for the world. Doesn't it make more sense if interpretation follows the consistency of the previous chapters, at least regarding what we're going to talk about? If it follows that same line and then also puts a focus on the time period of the new covenant, rather than leaving that whole period blank in apocalyptic literature. That is a huge reason why I believe that this interpretation is correct. But let me go over some of the points to begin with that I want to emphasize before I go into Daniel 8 and Daniel 9, just to give you an idea of what to look for and what to be thinking about, to help follow along so that you don't get totally lost if you're not familiar at all. Although it would help to be familiar with Daniel's 2, 7, and 8 in particular regarding what I'm going to cover. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell it to you, and then I'll tell you what I told you, because I think it's a good way to kind of learn. So let me tell you what I'm going to tell you. Key points on interpreting Daniel 8, and it'll go into chapter 9. First point, There are two words translated vision in chapters 8 and 9 of Daniel. Two different words in the Hebrew, which are translated vision in Daniel 8 and Daniel 9. Second, those two words are chazon and mareh. They're both translated vision. And mareh, one of the times, is translated as just appearance. The first time it's mentioned, in fact, it's translated to appearance. Up to that point in the chapter, when you see this word appearance, which is mareh, every time the word vision in the English appears up to that point, it is chazon. Then we see the word appearance, which is the first time mareh is used in the chapter. And then the rest of the times in the chapter that the term vision is there in the English, it's either mareh or chazon, two different words. Number two, the chazon vision is used more in the text of chapter 8 and is the greater context vision and is also directly associated with the 2300 evening and morning, or what's in the English also regarding the daily sacrifice, the evenings and mornings. In the King James, it's days. One, and when it in the verse about the first verse about the 2300, it's translated days, but it's associated with the evening, morning, and or Arab boker in the Hebrew. Number three, the chazon, and it won't be just, it'll say in the time of the end is when it'll end, okay? But it'll say it in several different ways in the chapter. So it's, watch for that. The chazon is not, the vision regarding the chazon is not finished until the time of the end. Number four, the mareh is intrinsically tied to the chazon and is a portion of it. Okay, we're going to see that when we untangle this word vision. The mareh is intrinsically tied up as part of the chazon. Number five, the mareh is a shorter and must be a shorter time period, which is the first portion of the chazon vision. We're going to see that, so watch for that. That's one of the main points here. The mareh vision must be shorter than the chazon and must be a part of it, and we're going to see that in the text in the way it's laid out. Number six, the mareh is the 70 weeks of Daniel's prophecy. In one way or another, the mareh is the vision which ends up being the 70-week prophecy of Daniel. And seven, the 23, so this is kind of a concluding matter about what we're going to see in the text. The 2300 evening and mornings must be interpreted as each day, or evening morning, which would be a day. So in the text, it's a symbolic day, right? 2300 days. They must be interpreted as a literal year. Symbol is day or evening, morning. That's the symbol. It's apocalyptic literature. And what the interpretation is, a literal year in history, an actual year of time in history and time. So the 2300 evenings and mornings must be interpreted as each symbolic day as a literal year, as the 70 weeks of Daniel, which are 490 days, symbolic days, are literally 490 years in history. That's pretty much universally agreed upon by biblical interpreters. The weeks of years, or the 70 weeks, which are 490 days in the text, each day represents a year of literal time. And everybody agrees on that. And I'm saying, because the mareh is the 70 weeks and it's directly associated with, as part of the chazon, therefore, if the 70 weeks are a day equals a literal year, then the 2300 is also a day for a year. And there's other reasons to see that, but because everybody agrees the 70 weeks are a day for a year, and I'm going to show that the mareh is part of the chazon, and that the chazon is the 2300, therefore it must be in the same interpretive principle, use the same interpretive principle, not to mention the 2300 is a longer period than the 70 weeks. Therefore, it must be also be a day for a year, or it couldn't be longer, because 2300 days in literal time would be a little over 6 years. But we know the 70 weeks are a day for a year, and they are 490 years. And so the 2300 must be longer than 490 years. And by using the same biblical interpretive method of a day for a year, it's not a problem. So those are the 7 points to remember going into the chapter 8 here, which I'm going to do now. Let's see. All right. Pull up the other slides. There it is. So I'm going to read chapter 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me. I'm going to underline the vision as I read through it, just so you kind of have as we go through it, you'll see all the times that you see this term. I'm underlining them because we're going to go back and see the use of these 2 words in the Hebrew, which are translated vision. So then we can look at it with fresh eyes. So just follow along, try to be thinking about what it's saying and how vision is used. I won't stop to explain much more until we get through it. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw, that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and it came up last. And I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, and he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and he stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. Before it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south and toward the east and towards the pleasant land. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground and practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto the certain saint which spake, How long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he came, and he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And it came to pass, when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision, and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Eli, which called, and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face towards the ground, but he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. And by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And the vision of the evening and morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore, shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And I, Daniel, feigned it was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So we have the two words for vision we're going to demonstrate here, and I'm going to color code these just for just to help remember. Okay. So now we're going to go look. Well, here, let's look at this. First in chapter 8, we see first use of the term chazown is in verse 1 and twice in verse 2. So here's the beginning of chapter 8. So the first vision that he starts talking about here at the beginning of the chapter is the chazown. So he's talking about, I had a vision, which appeared to me at the first. And in that vision, chazown, came to pass, and he's explaining, he's setting up the story here. And he's going to say, I saw in a chazown, I was by the river. And then he starts describing it, the ram, the he-goat, etc., which we just got the interpretation of at the end of the chapter. It's the vision. The ram represents Medes and Persians, which come after Babylon in the statue that Daniel interpreted for King Nebuchadnezzar. Chapter 7 went through with different symbols. Now chapter 8 starts with the second kingdom rather than the first, which was Babylon. Second kingdom is Medo-Persia, represented by the ram with two horns, one greater than the other, because Persia takes over from the smaller kingdom of the Medes, which are mentioned as two and one at first, okay, and it becomes Persia, which comes after Nebuchadnezzar. Then the he-goat with the single horn is Alexander the Great in the Greece Empire. This is all history, undisputed history, and he defeats Greece. Greece with Alexander, the he-goat, defeats the ram, which is Persia, or the Medes and Persians. And then his kingdom split into four kingdoms, okay? And that's what it's describing. So continuing. The next use of where we see the term vision is verse 13. And so he's just described the animals like I just explained, okay? Then he says, then I heard one saint speaking to another, the vision of the two people standing there while he's having this vision, Daniel is. And he asks, well, how long shall the chazown, so the same word of what he's just described, everything we talked about, because it says he's going to cast down the sanctuary. And so he asks, how long? And by the way, the word sacrifice is actually added in the English. It's not actually there. A better translation of what's there is the daily or the continual. And so it's associated with the evening or the morning and evening sacrifices in the Old Testament, okay, which is associated with atonement for the people on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Okay, so because they had a morning and evening sacrifice. All right. So he's asking, so this right here establishes that the sanctuary being cast down and the daily is associated with the chazown, which is one of our points here. Verse 15, we have the first appearance of the other term, Mareh. So let's look at that. And then again, and he said unto me, so this is the answer to that question. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So the sanctuary has been cast down. That's what was said about it. Then he asks, how long until the sanctuary is cleansed? So when will the fact that it's cast down not be cast down anymore? So how long will it be being trampled? And the answer is unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. It's cleansed because it's being cast down. So the 2,300 days is telling you when it stops being cast down. So the focus is the end of it being cast down. It's not talking about the period. It's not talking about the beginning of it, but he's asking how long till it's cleansed, how long till the problem is fixed. The answer comes unto 2,300 days or evening morning. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. And it came to pass that when even I, Daniel, had seen the Chazown. So far, Chazown vision is all the symbolism of the empires and speaking of the 2,300 days and to the end of the 2,300 days, because that's what it's looking to, unto 2,300 days when it's finally cleansed. Okay. All of that is only associated with the vision, the Chazown, because that's all that's been mentioned. So all that is associated with the Chazown, because it's said as part of the Chazown right here. And so Daniel came to pass, I had seen the Chazown, everything so far is the Chazown, sought for the meaning of it. He wanted to understand what it really meant. He's got the symbols, but what does it mean? And behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And this word appearance is Mareh, first mention of Mareh, which will now only be translated in English as vision. And this is important because the Mareh is not the same thing as the Chazown. Notice. So he's asking, tell me, I'll explain the Chazown. I don't understand what it means, even though he's gotten some information about it. What we read in verse 14. Okay, then now this is important. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Eli, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man, Daniel, to understand the vision. Daniel has asked about the Chazown, which is associated with everything up to that point, with the symbols we talked about, the 2,300, the sanctuary being cleansed. That's all the Chazown, right? And he's asking about it to understand that Chazown. And now one of the angels that are there while he's having the vision tells the other one, does it tell this guy to make him understand the Mareh? So he's asking about the Chazown, but the two men there that are going to give him interpretation are going to give him the interpretation of the Mareh, not the Chazown. So if you're reading it in English, you might think, oh, he's about to tell him about the vision, which is this the vision. That's all you know in the English. But no, Daniel's asking about the Chazown, and the angel says, make him understand the Mareh, which has just been introduced as an appearance of a man. So this angel is not saying to Daniel or to the other angel, make him understand what he's asking about. He's saying, no, make him understand about the Mareh, which is not the Chazown he was asking about. This is critical. If you don't know these words in the original, you would think he's answering him about what he asked about. But no, he's answering something else. This new word introduced regarding the appearance of a man. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and I fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the Chazown. Why is this also important? To bolster what I was just saying. He's saying, hey, we're going to make you understand this Mareh thing, which just got introduced. And then verse 17 is the angel not talking about this new Mareh vision, but he's answering Daniel's request about understanding the Chazown. And he's saying, hey, look, regarding the Chazown, hey, look, understand, that's for the time of the end. Not the Mareh, but the Chazown, what he asked about. But what he's going to explain is the Mareh. These four verses right here are critical, and you will never know it if you don't understand what the Hebrew says. And if you see it in the Hebrew, you can see why that's an issue if you can grasp it. There is a difference between these all being the same word and being two different words. It's a very important distinction there. Now, the next time the word vision we see in this chapter is verse 26. And both words are going to appear in verse 26. Both terms, which we now understand are two different things. And the vision, the Mareh, now this is another interesting thing. So far the Chazown vision, right, was associated with the evening, morning sacrifice, the daily, the 2300. We established that was the Chazown. And now we see all of a sudden here, we don't know much about the Mareh or anything about it really yet. But look how he says, and the Mareh of the evening and mornings, which was told is true. Wherefore shut up the... So somehow this is our first indication. Let's say it this way. This is our first indication that the Mareh is a portion of, or at least at this point, a part of the Chazown. In other words, the Mareh is a vision within the Chazown. So you can say it's a part of it. And this is the first indication, because you could say the Mareh is part of the evenings and mornings. And we'll see why that's the case. Just like a day is, a day is part of a week. That day of the week, the day of the week would be a part of the week. Or the evening is part of a day. The day of the day portion of a 24-hour period. This is our first indication that the Mareh is a vision that's part of the evenings and mornings. This is our first indication here. Okay, but we'll try to bolster that as we go. But that's just something, how you can read this. Okay, so he's saying the Mareh, because he wants to tell him about the Mareh, and he told him the Chazown is for the time at the end. He was asking about the Chazown, but he's saying, no, we're going to tell you about the Mareh, which is true, which is pertinent for Daniel right now, right? Wherefore shut up the Chazown, for it is for many days. Another indication that the Chazown is later. It's for the time of the end. It's not until many days. We're going to make you understand the Mareh, which is part of the evening and mornings, which is associated with the 2300, which is the Chazown. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business. And I was astonished at the Mareh, but none understood it. Other translations say nobody understood it. The idea is he was asking about the Chazown. He doesn't know what it means. He's introduced to the Mareh, which is the appearance of a man, or is associated with this appearance of the man. The angel tells him, hey, the Chazown is for later on, and for the time of the end. Let me tell you about the Mareh. And then this chapter ends with him telling us, we know he didn't understand the Chazown because he asked about it. The angel says, forget about that. It's for the time of the end. Let me tell you about the Mareh. Daniel gets sick and tells us he doesn't understand either of them. Okay. But he went back to, doing what he was doing for the king, because he's in the king's palace, right? In captivity. Now, a quick overview of chapter 8. Chazown was mentioned 7 times, Mareh 4 times. Now, chapter 9. So Daniel's praying about his people going back to the land and praying for the temple to be restored. He's repenting for his people. And he's crying out to God in chapter 9. And we see Gabriel comes back to him, the same angel that was there in chapter 8, explaining the vision, or was present when he was having that vision, which he doesn't understand yet. Daniel starts praying when he realizes captivity is prophesied by Jeremiah is almost over. And that's why he's praying about the restoration of Israel. And then the angel comes to him. So I'm just, to save time, I'm going to skip that. That's what's going on here. If you're not familiar with the chapter, I would just suggest you read it. I'm going to jump to where the visions come back up again. Okay. Verse 21, I was speaking in prayer, and even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the Chazown, remember in chapter 8, this is the next mention of it. He's just praying because he knows that the captivity is almost over. He's been praying to God. Gabriel shows up in answer to his prayer. And he mentions Gabriel, that guy from the beginning of chapter 8, The Chazown at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation, informed me and talked with me and said, "O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee great skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment went forth, and I came to show thee, and thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision." Any guesses? Chazown or Mareh? The Mareh, the one the angel had said, that's what we want to make him understand. And that the Chazown vision, which was at the beginning of chapter 8, only talking about the Chazown, which started with the Persian Empire and the symbolism through Greece, it's all associated with the Chazown. And now he comes back, and now he's going to say, it's come to make him understand the Mareh, like he had said, and that we established in chapters 15 through 17 or whatever it was, where the first mention of Mareh is. Make him understand the Mareh. Now he's come to explain the Mareh. So here we are. You're greatly beloved, therefore understand this matter. I'm going to give you great skill and understanding. Now consider the Mareh. Then what happens? 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. The Mareh is the vision of the Messiah, the appearance of a man. So the understanding that he's giving him about the Mareh vision, which we learned about or began to learn about in chapter 8, is a portion of the Chazown vision associated with the 2300 days. And now he's explaining the Mareh. And as we all know and accept, if we're believers, that this is 70 weeks or 490 days, which are actually 490 years. Okay. If the Mareh is 490 years and it's a portion of the 2300, then the 2300 must be a longer period of time than 490 years. If the 490 years are a day for a year, and the 2300 has to be longer because the Mareh is a portion of it, the Chazown vision, the 2300, evening and morning, then if we keep that consistent principle of interpretation, a day for a year, there are 2300 years, because the end of the 2300 is for the time of the end, not for many days. Don't worry about that. That's for the end. Let me tell you about the Mareh, which is a portion of the prophecy. And we get the 70 weeks prophecy. And part of that prophecy, of that what must occur and be executed within that period, is to seal up the Chazown. Because when Christ implements the new covenant, that's what's going to be trampled on by this power through history. Satan working through the empires, the principalities and powers that are opposing God. They're going to oppose the new covenant of salvation that Christ seals up till the time of the end. The time of the end, you can see the connection with Daniel 8. It's time of the end. And what this little horn does in Daniel 11. And at the end of Daniel 11, this time of the end is associated with the resurrection from the dead. So the final destruction of this power, this little horn that comes out of these empires way back before Jesus brought the new covenant, that power will be destroyed without hand at the second coming of Christ, 2 Thessalonians 2. Which comes out of Rome. So, again, let's go over what we learned here. Key points. There's the two words for vision that you must understand in the original language and how they interact in Daniel's 8 and 9, which we just did. Chazown and Mareh, two different words. The Chazown vision was the greater context of the vision that started in chapter 8 and was associated with the 2300. Both sides of it. No mention of Mareh, just Chazown. We hear about the successive empires, which gets interpreted for us by the angel, that they're the empires that come after Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. And the Chazown is the thing associated with that up until we are introduced to the Mareh. The Chazown is not finished until the time of the end. which the angel said like 3 different times in chapter 8. The Mareh is intrinsically tied to the Chazown and a portion of it. The Mareh of the evening is a part of the evenings and mornings. Okay. The Mareh is shorter time period, which is the first portion of the Chazown. I should have mentioned too. The 70 weeks are determined. The word there for determined is cut off. So he brings up the Chazown. The angel says, I'm going to make you understand the Mareh. And then he says, 70 weeks are cut off for thy people. Cut off from what? The Chazown. Meaning it's the first portion of it. That's another indicator that it's a portion of it. Also that it's associated with the evening and morning, day for a year. We know it's shorter though, because the 2300 is for the time of the end. And the Mareh is 490 years. The Mareh is the 70 weeks. We saw that in chapter 9. And that the 2300 evenings and mornings must consistently be interpreted as the same way as the 70 weeks, which is already universally accepted. The 2300 evenings and mornings represent a day, because that's what an evening morning is. It's a day in Hebrew. And like the 70 weeks of days, 490 days is each day representing a year, because that's how, when Jesus showed up from the decree from the 70 weeks prophecy, we know everyone agrees the days are actually years to be interpreted. The 2300 days are also years, because that period must be longer and stretch to the end of time for one, and be larger than the Mareh, which is 490 years. Keeping that consistent principle of how we interpret the symbolic time of the 70 weeks. We do the same with the 2300. It's consistent, and the text demands that the 2300 be longer than the 70 weeks. And it is, and it's clear.